Have you ever wondered how ham radio operators can communicate across vast distances? The answer lies in our sun, a massive natural nuclear reactor in the sky. This intriguing phenomenon, known as solar propagation, allows radio waves to bounce off the Earth's ionosphere, a layer heavily influenced by solar activity. It's a beautiful dance between the sun and our planet, which makes long-distance radio communication possible. So how does this solar activity affect radio communications? Let's dive deeper. Solar propagation in ham radio isn't as complex as it sounds. Let's break it down. In the simplest terms, solar propagation refers to how the activity of the sun influences the transmission of radio signals, specifically in ham radio communication. And believe it or not, this celestial body some 93 million miles away has a significant impact on your radio chatter. The sun emits energy in the form of solar flares and sunspots. These phenomena cause an increase in the ionization levels in the Earth's ionosphere. Now, the ionosphere is a layer of the Earth's atmosphere that's chock full of free electrons and ions, hence the name. Its ionization levels are crucial because they determine how well the ionosphere can reflect radio waves. When the sun is active and throwing out solar flares and sunspots left, right, and center, the ionosphere becomes more ionized. This increased ionization means that the ionosphere can reflect radio waves better. So, instead of your radio signals zipping off into the cosmos, they bounce back down to Earth, allowing for long-distance communication. Think of it like throwing a ball against a wall. The more force you use, the further the ball will travel when it bounces back. Similarly, the more ionized the ionosphere, the further your radio waves will travel. But here's the kicker. Solar activity isn't uniform. It varies, sometimes being high and other times low. This variation leads to changes in the ionization levels of the ionosphere, which in turn impacts the propagation of radio waves. So, if you're a ham radio enthusiast, it's not just enough to understand your equipment. You also need to keep an eye on what the sun is up to, because, as it turns out, the sun is a pretty significant player in the world of radio communication. So, the sun's activity directly impacts our ability to communicate over long distances on ham radio. Now you might be wondering, does the sun's activity remain constant? The answer is no. Let's delve into the concept of the sunspot cycle. It's a fascinating, roughly 11-year cycle of solar activity. The sun doesn't keep a steady pace. Instead, it has periods of high and low activity, known as solar maximum and solar minimum respectively. During a solar maximum, the sun is active and full of energy, creating a high number of sunspots. These sunspots are regions of intense magnetic activity, and they have a significant impact on the ionosphere, the part of Earth's atmosphere that reflects radio waves back to the ground. When there are a lot of sunspots, the ionosphere becomes more reflective, which can extend the range of ham radio signals. On the other hand, during solar minimum, there are fewer sunspots, and the sun's activity is at its lowest. This results in a less reflective ionosphere. Ham radio signals that might have bounced far and wide during a solar maximum might now struggle to cover the same distances. But don't worry, even during a solar minimum, ham radio operators can still communicate over long distances. They just need to adjust their operating habits, such as the frequency they use or the time of day they choose to operate. So as ham radio operators, it's crucial to understand the sunspot cycle and its effects on radio propagation. So, we've seen how the sun, through solar propagation, enables global ham radio communications. Let's take a moment to reflect on this extraordinary phenomenon. The sun, our local star, in its ceaseless dance of fusion and fission, generates solar winds. These winds, in turn, interact with our planet's magnetic field, creating conditions for radio waves to travel great distances. Understanding the sunspot cycle is critical for ham radio operators. Why? Because the number of sunspots directly affects the ionosphere's density. More sunspots mean a denser ionosphere, and a denser ionosphere means longer radio wave propagation. This natural system of long-distance communication is nothing short of a marvel. By understanding solar activity, we can predict the best times for global communication, allowing us to connect with people from all corners of the Earth. And that, dear radio enthusiasts, is how we harness the power of the sun to reach out and touch someone anywhere on this planet with a ham radio. Tune in next time for more fascinating insights into the world of radio communications.